Hi, my name is Ernest Servantes, the chef owner of the Burnt Bean Company in Seguin, Texas. Uh, I'm from Uvalde. Okay, I'm from a little town called Uvalde, Texas. Born and raised there. I left when I was in college, but predominantly all my life skills as well as my life inspiration and everything that inspires me to cook comes from Uvalde, Texas. Uvalde's small, but we're strong, as I always say. Uvalde always takes pride in everything. I think that's what makes me who I am today because of the people that I was raised with, the family that helped me come with the great morals and values, as well as just the all-town people of Uvalde, Texas. That's what takes pride. So I'm a hometown boy, even though I live in New Braunfels, but I take pride and always claim that I'm from Uvalde, Texas.
Uh, so we pretty much got our background in there. So let's go ahead and we'll just jump into the family cooking deal real quick.
Okay.
Again,
Right. In our life, okay, hold on. Growing up, all right.
go ahead.
Okay, uh, growing up in Uvalde, Texas, I was really blessed with a family on both sides of my family that were phenomenal cooks. My grandma had a tamale business, and my dad was barbecuing all the time, as well as my grandfather, which is my mom's dad. Would always, I would remember going to his. Actually had an outside kitchen, and he would barbecue there, or he would make salsas and things like that. So growing up, we were very spoiled because everybody cooked in our family. So if it wasn't one side of the family that we ate at, it was the other side of the family that ate good. So we always had good food growing up. So it was a shock when I left home and came to the big city, and the food wasn't the same. But I had so many great inspirational people that I grew up with to help me cook the way I am today.
Perfect. That was better than the first one.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, can you ease up on the clicking?
Oh, sorry. Good. All right. So let's just go through real quick. So let's go ahead and jump into your cooking career.
Okay. This is not barbecue yet, right? Or
No,
you're
we're
talking
still
about?
going to be talking about you going to school,
Right.
figuring out what you want to
Right.
do.
Okay.
Fell into the
Right.
cooking
So,
career.
I guess the way I ended up in the cooking industry is that, going to college as well as anybody else that goes to college, you need to have a job, and I always thought, I love to eat, and I knew that I couldn't afford working and then paying for meals, so I went into the restaurant business because one, when I was in high school, or really my freshman year in college, I ran into as a waiter, but I realized that was free food, and that was a way to maintain myself. So I worked in the restaurant industry, and while I was at the restaurant industry going to college, I started not falling in love with college and not falling in love with college as well as studying. And I has. Can you hear that?
It's all right. Go ahead.
Okay, going to college and having needing somewhere to eat, I realized that that was a win-win situation. And not necessarily do I work, but then I get free food at the same time just to survive. It was survival mode. It wasn't one of those, oh, I get to eat out all the time. It was no. It was I had nothing in my refrigerators. I was broke as a joke, and that was the only way means to survive. But as I was working in the restaurant industry, I realized something that I sucked at school. I really didn't have that passion, but at the same time, I realized that I found what I was calling it. It was restaurant. I was really good at it. I was really, I'm talking, I hit the floor running and I understood food. And I don't think it had anything to do with my growing up because all the shit that I had made growing up had nothing to do with what I was doing now, but I fell in love with the food. And if I felt like I was inspired, like I used to get excited to go to work, and I used to work so many hours, and I was one of those guys that if you didn't want your shift, I'd pick it up. And no one does that nowadays. And I realized that the better and better I cooked, the more and more incentives there was. I became a corporate trainer. I got paid more, and I realized that I became a leader, and to run kitchens at the age of 21, running $1 million kitchens was pretty cool. But that's where it changed because back in the 90s, there was no such thing, or there was such thing as chefs, but no one really knew how to get there. There was no Food Network, and there was no cooking shows. I think there was just like Julia Childs, and some kind of funky shows on PBS. But if you wanted to be a chef, it's because you wanted to be a motherfucking chef. It wasn't this Food Network inspirational Bobby Flay crap. It was, you wanted to do it. And I remember growing up telling my parents I want to become a chef. They weren't too impressed by it because I don't really think they figured out. They just thought I was a glorified cook. But I wanted to become a chef, and that's where my culinary career just started. And 20 years later, I got myself a barbecue joint, and 20 years later, I got myself a barbecue joint, and I'm an owner and a chef of my dream. And it tells you that it took me 20 years to get where I'm at. And none of it was taken for granted. I had to work my ass off to get where I was at. There was no handouts. There was no freebies. There was no, I knew a guy because I knew a guy. I worked my ass off to get to where I was at. I had a dream and I had a purpose, and I didn't have money. That's the biggest deal. A lot of these guys, they got a guy they know or another guy they know, and they get these restaurants and they don't give a shit about them because they didn't have to work for it. I give a shit about my restaurant because this is all I have. Everything I have is for this restaurant. So, it's one of those things. So it took me 20 years to get where I'm at, and I'm going to do it. I'm never going to let it down. This, the Burnt Bean will be one of the baddest motherfucking places to eat. I'll tell you that. And it's going to have some bad barbecue, and we're bringing stuff that people aren't used to at a regular barbecue joint. At the end of the day, it smells like barbecue here, but it doesn't look like it's a barbecue joint. And that's what makes us different. Burnt Bean's been different since day one. Burnt Bean, since we started in the barbecue world, as you could say, I could tell you the story of how the whole Burnt Bean started. My dream, every chef's dream is to own a restaurant. But I always wanted to open a barbecue joint because of, my dad. I always thought, my dad always said, man, I would have loved to open a barbecue joint, but my dad just doesn't have that ambition. So, I realistically, I did not know how to have the financial means of opening a barbecue joint, as well as I didn't have any reputation in the industry. And me being a chef, you first got to have money. You got to have reputation, and second, you got to have the chops. I didn't have any of that. So, I thought of the best way to get to where I wanted to be and plan, at the top of the mountain was the restaurant. I was down here, and how was I going to get up there? And the most financially realistic way was doing competitions. Barbecue competitions. There was, I always tell these people, when I started competition world, there was no classes. There was no, it was even before MySpace. Okay, there was just blogs and there was these group chats and certain internet places that would talk about competition, but they wouldn't tell you anything. They just let you know where, things were going and stuff like that. So that was like 13, 14 years ago, even, it's about that long. And that's where I started. I started off with a HB barrel pit and a knockoff Weber that I've had that I got at a rummage sale. And that's it. And I had my best friends, which was Santos and Anthony. And, and the only reason we did it is because my neighbor, Dale, he was like, dude, you got to do these competitions. I'm like, let's try it. And he signed up for it and everything. And right off the bat, 60 teams, we got first place. So we were hooked. And but as time went on, I got more obsessed. And I got more obsessed that, they always say, make your obsession your passion. And that's what happened to me. I was so obsessed with becoming, the best rib cooker, because that's what I was in charge of on my team. And then I slowly progressed, and my team just started dwindling because they weren't into it as much as I was. I didn't want to go out there and drink beer. I didn't want to go out there and just be okay. I wanted to win every weekend. I wanted to be the grand champion. I wanted the ones that everybody feared with, when I got there. And that's what happened. I started taking over ribs and chicken and brisket, and that was all on my own. The Burnt Bean Company was Ernest Servantes. It was no one else.
Let's talk about Bell, though.
Okay.
Bell.
Hey, what part do you want to talk about?
No, I'm saying it's at the cook-offs, originally when you started going out on your own. And it was you and Bell.
No, it was my friend. Okay, I know what you're talking about. So, we started off with friends, and I think we, our cook-off team had like 12 people. It was a bunch of friends and beer and that, but at the end of the day, it ended up just becoming me, my wife, and my daughter, and my son. It went from a party scenery, best friends to family. And when we became a family team, that's when we started becoming successful, because your team was focused as much as you were. You wanted to win, as well as, you know, you put a lot of things on the line. I remember sometimes I wanted to go do a cook-off and we didn't have financial means to do it. You know, it's like, do we pay the light bill? Do we pay the water bill, or do we do a cook-off? And we, you know, that's what it was, you know, and we got lucky. I promised her, you know, I promised my family that, you know, I'd at least break even and let's do it again. And I remember, you know, growing, we'd go to these cook-offs and you have these huge rigs that were elaborate, or you have these awesome, like, you know, trailer RVs and buses with all these people living in, you know, air conditioned and on an August Texas heat. And what did I have? I had a sponsor generator DeWalt 5,000 watt that weighed like 4,000 pounds just to push a fan. And we slept in the back of the truck and tents. I remember sleeping in tents. And, you know, we used to pull out the mat. We were so poor. We used to pull out the mattress from the couch, and we rolled it up with bungee cords and throw it in the back of the truck. Whatever we could put in the back of my Dodge truck is what we did. And we survived. So you never tell your kids how poor you are. You always make it fun. So we always told our little girl that we were camping. So she thought it was fun to at least sleep outside in the back of a truck. And when it got hot, we put her inside. She was 2 and 3, and put her in the air conditioner, you know. Just thinking about it, it just brings in the heartstrings. But, you know, we were broke, but we had a dream and a vision. And I was not going to let it up. But, yeah, so, you know, we slowly got better. And I started getting stronger, and I practiced. And we started getting sponsorships. You know, who even knew about sponsorship back in the day? And I remember this guy's like, man, you did good here, man. Try a bottle of my sauce. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And there was a big guy, Bubba over here, Bubba Ranky. And he was a good guy, and he gave me his rubs. And I was like, oh, I'm getting sponsored. You know, I got rubs. And, you know, you might not think of it as much, but that was, you know, 20, 30 bucks you didn't have to spend at cook-offs that went back in your pocket. But I realized the better I got more doors opened, and we slowly got better and better. And then we started, you know, our goal was to be the best in New Braunfels, then be best around the county, and then just keep on spreading. And we went from barrels to, my first trailer pit was a Pits and Spits 30 by 60. And we went from there to, we went to a 18-foot porch, and then a 22-foot porch, and then to a 32-foot trailer that had every bell and whistle. I think it was valued at like $60,000. Who is it? Hey, can y'all go lock the door? Oh, it's free. Ole, Freddie, I'm in the interview. You just get in the picture. You know you want to be filmed behind me. And then I met Freddie, and he's a nice guy. Dude, I just had one. It's really good. That batch is really good.
This is Mark. How's it going? What y'all doing? Shooting. Meet the Pitmaster. Get any else back? No, you're good.
Man, you missed a good lunch special today.
Because I bought.
Wow.
Hold on. I bought
Wow.
a guy that's going to be bringing a concert here every year, $10 million, but they're going to be bringing like Morgan Wallen and stuff. I know right now.
Why didn't you bring him to the Burn Bean?
I'd like to. He's vegetarian. And I said, dude, there's fish. And he said, let's eat the sushi. So me and Steve and him met.
Oh, okay. It's
But
cool.
hey, we're trying to bring like 25 or 30,000 people every year for a big concert. So. Good.
Denise, from now on, you can cut in line. He's not allowed to. He has to stay in the back.
All right, so let's make that. Let's go ahead and your first real pit.
Yeah.
Into the pit maker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pits and Spits.
Pits and Spits.
Yeah. So we start from there?
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, once we started saving money and once we started winning, we realized that we were getting more money in our pockets, and that's when we went into our first investment pit, and then we got our first trailer was a 30 by 60 Pits and Spits. George Shore and Victor and all those guys that are now Pitmaker, they were running the show over there, and you know, I was really excited. I remember my mom told me, if you come up with the first $2,000, I don't know how much that thing cost me, because if you come up with the first 2,000, your grandma will give you 1,000, and I'll give you 1,000. So I saved it up. You know, I remember I was like, oh, I was so scared because it was all our money we had, and and we bought it. My parents, backed me up, and so did my grandparents, because everybody believed in me. And that's when it really took off, because now we had a consistent trailer that could produce a consistent product, and we got more and more successful. And then I started winning grand champions. That was the cool part. I always got, first in ribs or a first in brisket, but never everything was all together. And that's when we started really working as a team and understanding the whole concept of one trailer, one all product, and producing the same quality of meats. And that's where we became successful, and we figured it out. Well, I figured it out. And now I can't tell you how many times I was on the internet and reading books, because there was no Facebook forums or groups, and there was no cooking classes. And that's one thing I'm proud of, is that I never had to take a fucking class. I'll tell you that right now. My success is because I worked my ass off. A lot of these new generation are cooks, and there's nothing wrong with it. More power to you. But it's like you rather want the answer for the equation than trying to figure out the equation. You want to go from the question to the answer, and they're like, fuck, what's in the middle? And my ass worked to get all that. So that's what I think as really the reason why I'm successful, not only in the competition world, but in the restaurant world too, because I understand the whole equation of understanding a piece of meat, a piece of rib. Any kind of protein is always different, but if you understand the basics of the science of that meat, you can conquer it all. Because people think, oh, you slap it on there, it's gonna be cooked, and then that's certain. No, you gotta factor in the humidity, you gotta factor in if it's raining outside, how hot, how windy, all that stuff takes into place. And what kind of brisket you're using, or what kind of rib. And that's the difference between me and a lot of people is that I figured that shit out. And I'm proud to say that. I worked my way up, and I understood every single thing. It's like I went to a maze and went through every part of the maze to understand it. And that's what makes me different than anybody else. Even though I'm just in my early 40s, and I was most successful in my early 30s in barbecue competition world, compared to, if you see all the competition worlds, all the old school guys were all the old guys. I was one of the young guys. I was in my 30s. I was like 30, 28, 29, 30 years old. And I was winning, and I was beating those guys. And that you didn't see that, and much less a Mexicano out there. Mexicano that was repping out there. You had the Ronnie Wades and all those cats, and they were the ones that they respected. But, I was this young guy just trying to pay it forward to the future of not only the future barbecue guys, but the Mexicanos as well. And that was one of my things, hell, I used to cook against you, Joey. And as I got stronger and stronger, I got more of a reputation, and that reputation led me to what opened Pandora's box was the Food Network. And that was with Chopped. I remember that's when Facebook was around, and it was, I forgot what it's called, Texas Pitmasters. They were looking for chefs, but yet pitmasters, and they're like, Ernie, you're like the only dude that fits this profile. And I applied for it, and I said, screw it. And lo and behold, I got on the show, and the rest is history. I won the thing. And that opened Pandora's box for everybody. And when I mean everybody, because at the time, there was no one that respected IBCA or any Texas cooks. We were our own pond. No one, the KCBS world, the Rod Grays and those guys out there. You had Darren and Travis and all those guys. They didn't respect Texas cooks. They thought we were jokes. But do we blame them? No, because we weren't there. We were our own invasive species. That's the problem with Texas cooks. Texas cooks is made up of nothing but badasses, and I'll be right now, and I've told everybody in their face. Texas cooks are some bad motherfuckers. The problem is Texas is too comfortable being in Texas. We're on our own pond. There's a big freaking ocean out there. Why go out there if we have everything we need here? We're an invasive species, and when I say we're an invasive species, is that once we started venturing out, no one could stop us, and they still haven't. And I don't want to brag about it, and I don't want to say that it was me, but I kind of think that I was one of the guys that had the balls to go out there. Yeah, there was a couple of guys like Trigg and them, but Trigg didn't do both. We went out there, and we got a blazing thing of me and Fred Robles and all those guys. And when I went and did Pitmasters and Barbecue Crawl, and I don't even know what other fucking shows I had, where I went against Myron, and I was starting to win over there on TV, and it inspired a lot of guys. They're like, wait, if Ernie can do it, we can do it too. And there's a lot better cooks out there. And if I could say, hey man, I helped you, inspired you to go there, that my job is done. And what do? Me and Fred and Carlo and Kurt, Phillip, We went out and did, we went to Virginia, we went to the Royal, and we went to the Jack, and we went out there and kicked ass. And that's when they started noticing Texas. And that's when they started respecting us. That's when they started having Sterling out there, the king of smokers. Not necessarily just invite Jamie Geer and Johnny Trigg, but invite some guys that will come out there and kick your ass. And that's what we did. And that's where we got our reputation. And now look at all the Texas boys out there all over the country. Hell, Fred Robles won the whole fucking thing. You have Corey Mikes and his dad winning the whole damn thing. You have so many damn cooks out there. Lee Hinkle. There's some guys out there that are kicking butt. Bill Purvis right now. They're not afraid. You got the guys, oh shit, you got Matt from West Texas. You got JD Henley. All these guys are now going out because they're not afraid. And the rest of America, is scared. And that's the way it should be.
So on that note right there, there's a couple things I wanted to come back to, which was one was the story of the Sugar Skull that you used to rock on the pit all the time.
Mm-hmm. The one about the guy owed me money?
No, just the Sugar Skull that you had on the stack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A guy owed me money. That's why he made it for me.
Yeah.
I was like Sugar Skulls. Okay.
But I mean, that's the deal. Is that was like that was a signature thing for you.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't need the he owed you money part, but I think it was just that signature deal with the Sugar Skull.
Okay.
And then we'll dig up an old picture of that.
Okay. Tell me when you're ready.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Every barbecue team, when I was doing this whole barbecue competition world, they always had like cute little piggies or a cute little cow or a cow chasing up freaking a chicken. And it was like, meh, that's not us, man. We were like, we weren't not necessarily the bad boys of barbecue, but we were the ones that were different. We've always been different. I love skulls and pinup dolls and all that stuff. And, I like Day of the Dead stuff. So I thought when we got our first trailer, I got a really cool custom smokestack, and it was a big old sugar skull. And I always put it when we got to competition, put it on top of the smokestack. And, we always stick, be out of the norm. All these people are like, why would he put a skull on his thing? But that's what we were, man. And that's what we had our thing. And, the Burnt Bean back in the day had skulls all over the place. All my pits had skulls. Still today, we started with that sugar skull, and then it went to the whole mural of, the burnt bean in the back of the pit maker, the vault. And then it went to another trailer with, our emblem always had some kind of skull on it. And then it got to the bigger one, which had sugar skulls and Aztec warriors and all kinds of crazy shit, because that's how I used to roll. It's kind of, I just laugh now, but, we were different. The Burnt Bean since day one was different. The name Burnt Bean Company, a lot of people, when I was, telling them I'm going to open a restaurant, they thought I was opening a coffee shop. Because if you think of the Burnt Bean Company, it doesn't even scream barbecue. It never has. And that's what made us so special since day one, when we were, when we called ourselves the Burnt Bean Company. We knew we were different from day one, and we still continue to be different. And that's what makes us unique and special. We're not a cookie cutter barbecue competition cook. We're not a cookie cutter team. And definitely now with the restaurant, I guarantee you we're not a cookie cutter restaurant. We're not the normal people. We've never been normal. I've always been weird too. So, from skulls, sugar skulls, to Day of the Dead skulls, to any kind of thing like that, the Burnt Bean has always classified themselves as something different. And that's how I always wanted to be. I didn't want to be in the mix. I always wanted to go against the grain. If everybody was running that way, I would run that way just on purpose. I didn't give a shit. I just didn't want to be with everybody else. I never rolled with anybody else. I wasn't there to be the most popular kid in school. And that's always been my philosophy. I never wanted to be the cool kid. I always wanted to be the different kid. I wanted to be the one they respected. That's how I was in the barbecue competition world. My motto in competition world was I was there to do, I always used to have a saying from a movie. It was called chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I ran out of bubblegum, so all I got to do is kick ass. And now my reputation when I got older in the competition world is I was there, to snap necks and cash checks. That's what I was all about, show me the money. And now it's more of that have that attitude when I come to the barbecue restaurant world, is that I want to prove there's so many great barbecue fucking joints. There is. I'm going to keep it real. There's a lot of guys that are better than me, but I still want to be different, and that's what makes us different. we're going to try to produce the best quality barbecue there is in Texas. But at the same side, you know, I got 500 cards up my sleeve. You know, I can hit you with my culinary background. I can hit you with all kinds of cuisine, you know, and that's what makes us different. That not only are we showing the normal stuff, we're throwing some crazy shit at you on left field. And that's what's going to make us set us apart from everybody else. You know, that's where the burnt beans is all about.
So, on that note right there, you're not craft barbecue, you're not Tex-Mex barbecue, or are you?
Okay. You know, everybody wants to classify, you know, everybody wants to find their place in the barbecue world, in the restaurant world. Some people call each other craft barbecue. Some people call themselves Tex-Mex barbecue. Some of them call them Southern, Northern Carolina stuff. Burnt Bean ain't any of that shit, I'll tell you that right now. Burnt Bean runs Ernie, the Burnt Bean barbecue. I'm not gonna classify my barbecue to nothing because I don't want to be compared to anybody. That's the difference between me and everybody else. When I came into this world, I'm not trying to compete against, you know, Truth or Aaron Franklin. I'm not trying to compete against my good friend Isaul, you know, or Miguel. Those guys got Tex-Mex barbecue. That's what they want to be known as. That's what they're all about. And more power to them because they're throwing out some bad fucking food. You know, not Burnt Bean. Burnt Bean doesn't classify themselves. Burnt Bean does what Burnt Bean wants to do. If Burnt Bean wants to throw tortillas in a burrito that one day on a special, they want to throw huevos rancheros with brisket on there, I'm going to do that. Next week, I'm going to throw oxtails at you. The week after that, I'm going to throw you something Creole. You want to feel like I'm being Frenchy-like, I'm going to throw that at you. It's all going to be incorporated with smoke. But Burnt Bean does what Burnt Bean wants to do. Don't classify me because I've never been classified. You know, ever since day one, you know, when we used to do competition worlds, people were doing, you know, bacon wrapped, you know, chicken as their chef turn in, or a steak and shrimp. Burnt Bean would throw you boudin stuffed quail, fried, and then throw it in there, and we would win first place. We are always different. And that's what makes Burnt Bean so special, is that we're not a cookie cutter. We don't want to be. I don't want to be classified. I hate it when they try to classify me as Tex-Mex or Mexican-American influence. Yeah, my motto is Viva Barbecue. But that's hooray barbecue, long live barbecue. And because that's my roots, but I'm not telling you that's what I'm going to be cooking. You know, I have my Sunday specials, and the only reason I have it, and then you might say, well, that's kind of hypocritical, Ernest, because you're not Tex-Mex, but on Sundays you're serving menudo barbacoa and you know, mollejas and tripas. I said, yeah, but that's not because I'm Tex-Mex. That's an homage, like I told you about my family. Every Friday, every Sunday growing up was what? Back in the day. Now it's convenient. Was what? Menudo. I remember memories like that. I remember my dad's barbacoa. I remember my dad's mollejas and tripas. That is my thank you and my, you know, dedication to my family roots. It's not telling you I'm a Tex-Mex place, because I'll throw something at you in left field. I'll throw grits at you. I'll throw whatever at you. But that is not Tex-Mex. That's my family. That's what we're about. And I want to share with you what my family traditions were. And that's why we only have it on Sundays, because that's when it was, Sundays. But to classify Burnt Bean with Burnt Bean is not. Don't put me in a fucking classification, because we won't. I'm that kid, if you try to put me in a classification, I'll kick the wall down or I'll knock your cards down, because that's not how we are.
So jumping back a couple more steps was, I've always looked at you as a barrier breaker. To me, you were the first successful, I'm going to say successful Hispanic competition cook. To me, I mean, there's several guys who come to mind, like Louis Lindo, like you know, George Shore,
Right.
you know, those guys had a little niche thing that they did.
Right.
But you're the one who actually came out and like I said, I mean, you went up through the ranks.
Right.
And you made it to where you made it, and then once you had the opportunity to do the Food Network deal, I mean, that was huge. That's
Right.
I remember being at the Faust.
Right.
You know, at that, you know, at your release, at that party. And that's kind of one of those things too that, you know, I believe that you paved the way for so many people.
Right.
Just like Fred's paving the way today, you did it dirty style back
Right.
in the day, because you were like you were the first.
Right.
Walked across across that deal. And I think that there's a lot of people who do get that inspiration from you.
Right.
I think without you succeeding in what you did, 50% of the teams that are out there today wouldn't be out there.
Right.
And that's it. And
Right.
so I think that you kind of hit on all that, you know, and I think that it's you know, it was an important thing for you to incorporate like everything that you did with that Lhasa and all that other stuff to make people understand it more. Is there anything in particular along those notes that you would tell people, you know, if you want it, go get it?
Yeah.
If you,
Yeah.
something along
Okay.
that line, you know.
Okay.
An inspirational something.
Right. Okay. Before the Food Network, you have this Mexicano straight from Uvalde, Texas, that really doesn't know, but no one knows who the fuck that dude is. And that's how I had it. Everything I've gotten, like I've said before, was never given to me. And I never had anybody that inspired me. I never had anybody that to look up to in the community of barbecue that were Mexicanos. There wasn't. My dad and my grandma were the only ones. There wasn't like the Fred Robles nowadays or the Darren Worth. Those guys are like inspirationals now. But growing up and going into this barbecue, I had no one, dude. I literally had to fucking make my own road. Every time someone would doubt you, they wouldn't, believe in you or things like that. I'll tell you exactly the moment my life changed from nice Ernest, nice guy, works hard, to who the fuck is this dude? I'll always remember I was in the first filming of Chopped, and I was in the car with 3 other dudes and a lady, and we're driving to the set, and they said, I was in the back, we're in the van or whatever, and I'll always remember, and they all knew each other, and no one knew who the fuck I was. And that's when my life changed, when that guy goes, okay, it's gonna be between me or you, or me or you. And they're like, what about that guy in the back? What, the big Mexican? No one knows who the fuck he is. He's probably gonna go out the first round. And that is when my life changed. I said, I'm about to make all y'all my bitches. And it was the best feeling in the world when I whooped their ass on the first round. And then everybody comes back and they're the group and they're like, so who won? They're like, that dude. And everybody's like, who the fuck's that dude? And I said, yeah. So I knew right then and there in that van that I was like, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm gonna show you who I am. And not only was I representing myself, but to be the inspiration to Mexicanos. And not only that, that's not where it's about. It's to be the inspiration to all the small town folk that never thought they can get out of their small hometown. That's where it's at. That's what I want to inspire. After I won Chopped, which of course changed my life, but you won't believe how many hundreds of emails and letters from high school kids and college kids from small town USA, Mexicanos a lot, saying, I always thought that I would have to work at the local factory or the local, city, work for the city. I'm from a small town like Crystal City or smaller than that. But when I saw you and I know where you're from and you went all the way up there and you beat them, you inspired me to follow my dreams. And that's what I've always been about, is I always said if I ever became something great, I would pay it forward. I would inspire the future Mexicanos. I would inspire the future Americans to dream big and work hard, because I am living testament of what hard work looks like. I am living testament of you don't say no and never take no for an answer. I work my ass off all the time. I've always have. I've never really not worked hard. I had to work hard for everything I got. I had to work harder, not necessarily, I had to work twice as hard because I was educated. I had to work 3 times as hard as the other guy because I didn't have a culinary degree. I had to work 5 times hard because I was Mexicano. That's what, if you want it, it's there, but you got to work hard for it. Nothing in this world is fucking free. This is a dog-eat-dog world. So anytime I had the opportunity to get my reputation and anybody that needed help, that's why I was there for them. I inspired a lot of people, and that's what I'm all about. At the end of the day, when I leave this place, I have nothing to give. I want memories. I want to be that old man in the back of, at the store buying, I don't know, a case of beer or something. And there's a younger guy with his kid, and she goes, you see that old man right there? And they're like, that man? He goes, yeah, his name's Ernest Servantes. He inspired me to cook. He was one of the baddest dudes ever. And that's where I want to have a legacy. because at the end of the day, nothing was given free for me. And for me to have the opportunity to help inspire the future, I didn't get anything. There was so many things I try to change and help that you see the competition. If you can see the competition world now, where it is compared to where it was, and you see what put them together, I'm not trying to say arrogant, but my name's right down the middle. I think I'll help the, when Smithfield really brought me in, and, that brought in KCBS world and IBCA world together. We got the competition thing going. I think that I have a lot to do with what that was, is because I was the middleman for everybody. I think there was like the Bloods and the Crips, and they didn't really want to talk. I was the middleman and say, hey, let's all get together. We're all cool. Now they're all best friends. Dude, it's kind of cool whenever you got guys making a 5-hour detour flying in just to come and eat at my restaurant because they're from Nebraska, one of the world championships. Or you got Sterling from Arizona coming in, just taking a detour just to come and eat in my restaurant. Do you think he's coming to eat at my restaurant because of my food? Yes, but yet it's more of a, I respect you, man, and I'm proud of it, and it's all about the support. KCBS brothers are coming to support me. I guarantee you 10 years ago they wouldn't do that shit. It's because we all respect each other now. And I think it has a lot to do with what I've done, man. And I at the end of the day, I'm okay to say I left my footprint in the sand, and I think people will remember me that. I hope I inspired a lot of people,
That's it, exactly what I was looking for. You good on everything? All right, so now we're going to jump on to, we've already kind of gone over kind of the story of kind of coming out on your own.
Right.
Okay, why you wanted to open the place and everything else.
Right.
Let's talk about Dave.
Okay. All right, you ready?
Hold on one second. Yes.
It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's super motherfucking Dave in the house. Super Dave Kirkland. My white brother from another mother, man. The other day, Dave and I were talking, and we were talking about all these memories, and it's amazing that some of the biggest things of my life when it came to the barbecue world, he was right there next to me. That was, he's been there for so much, and we've been best friends for 10 years, and you got two of the the most opposite people in the world, and that's what makes us so unique. And that's why we click so good, is that motherfucker, I taught him, and he comes and beats me with my own shit. That's never happened before, man. And I realized that I've given so many recipes out, and I've told people how to do it. At the end of the day, they always change shit up, and they never do good because I was comfortable, because I know you're gonna change it. He's the only dude that ever never changed it. He did everything I told, and he fucking kicked my ass with my own shit. And I was like, this dude, man. And I thought from then on out, we clicked, and we've been best friends for 10 plus years. And now when I started this whole pop-up thing, with the Burnt Bean doing these pop-ups, he wanted to do it. And then we started doing them, and he wanted to be part of that dream, because he saw something. I think he saw my passion, and he wanted to be part of something special. And he's like, I'm going to be here with you, man. And I said, all right. And he's been there, and he's kept his word since till today. And that's a year and a half later. And we work so well as a team, but it's cool to see him grow as well. I hate to see I'm his bigger brother because he's older than me, but to see a guy have as much passion for a piece of brisket, or, what can we do to make it better? And that's the problem with that's the problem with the Burnt Bean. It's not a problem. It's that, what can we do to make it better? Hi. Uh-huh.
Karen Taylor.
Hi.
I've been talking with possibly your wife, because we're gonna,
The catering here, right?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Are y'all about to do
Yeah,
a
we're
promo or something?
we're filming a show.
Yeah. So I was asking today, can we use the Soul venue too?
Yeah, actually, that's her. You can talk to her.
Because he's thinking about seating in here, we might have 75 people.
That's the lady you got to talk to.
I'm Karen.
We did maybe some
Niece? Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was just going home and I thought, my son's gonna be on with me, because he's in town. But I was so busy at lunch, we just couldn't. It just couldn't do it.
Yeah, lock it. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, they're all, there's a bunch of people in suits and stuff out there too.
Well, yeah. You saw the dead body in the middle of the road, right? You heard about that?
What?
Dude, yeah. Fucking Wednesday. So I'm driving. It's like 7 in the morning. And I see a detective's car. And I'm driving. It's a fucking dead body. No one's heard about it on TV. No one said anything. There's a dead body right there, dude. Right in front of Mark Alvis's place. So I tell Dave, call Dave. I say, call Mark up. He's like, dude, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. I was like,
We fell out of the hearse on the way.
no, dude, it's been hush hush. They usually by now would announce it. They haven't announced anything.
Aaron Dunn had already said some
Yeah,
bullshit.
exactly.
Okay,
All right, so but Dave, Super Dave.
yeah.
Can you move the wire kind of to the rear?
Yeah.
So basically, you got all the way through to the cooking the recipe, cooking the
Right.
way that you
Right.
taught him how to cook,
Right.
and and that he's always been there because he's the handyman. and
Right.
that
Right.
type of deal.
Okay, got you. You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he when I realized that he wanted to be part of this dream, but he didn't have any of the cooking background, I was like, don't worry about that. I know you can do that. And the reason why you call him Super Dave is the dude can literally do anything. Like he can, build you a house, rebuild you an engine, create you a whole new car because he can, he's a fabricator. Oh, but yeah, he can kick your ass in brisket. He was one of those kind of guys. He can go and fix something so quick. And that's why he's Super Dave. And I love the dude. Not only, it's kind of funny because we have the same friends and no one linked us together. No one be like, wait. Y'all are friends? I'm like, no, we're business partners. Like, wait, what? How did I not know that y'all hung out? And that's the crazy part. And that's a real huge reason why he's my business partner. And he owns, he's one of the owners of the Burn Bean Company. There's, at the end of the day, there's 3 of us, man. And I tell people that God has a lot to do with my life, and I'm looking at him, I should be looking at you. But I think God brings people together at a certain time because of a reason. I'm not into fate. I really don't believe in fate. I believe that you create your future. But no, I'm not bullshitting. The stars like aligned and brought me, Freddie, and Dave together. And we bring three things that no one else has, and we're 3 of the, all of us 3 bring 3. Us 3 bring something special to the table, every single one. There's not 2 chefs and a dude. There's not a dude and a chef, or there's no chefs and all 3 dudes. The reason why us 3 work together good is because we're not stronger than the other person what they're good at. Freddie knows his shit when it comes to laws and everything. Dave knows his shit when it comes to anything, okay? And I know my shit when it comes to food. Yeah, they're not going to question my decision. They're not going to question my decisions on when it comes to the food. They might give advice, but that's my call. I don't have to worry about another chef butting heads with. Same thing with Dave. When Dave says something, I just agree with him. When Freddie brings something up, yeah, I agree with him because that's what makes us Burn Bean, us 3. We bring 3 things to the table, and I think that's what, has been so successful so far. But Dave is my brother from another mother, and I love that motherfucker to death. And it's funny because him and I are the same. Like, we're high strung, we freak out on the stupidest things, but what makes us so successful and what makes us different than anybody else in this industry, it's like anybody can do briskets and anybody can do ribs and anybody can do specials and all this shit, but it's the attention to the smallest detail. We both have OCD. The other day, I'll give you an example. I did not like the way the bark on the turkey was, and it bothered me for the whole night. I didn't sleep the whole night, and it was bothering him. I figured it out. And it was because the brand of seasoning we used changed manufacturers, so it was a smaller grind. Just the little things like that. And it affects them. So when you got two dudes losing sleep because of a bark on a fucking turkey breast, a lot of people wouldn't give a shit about that. But that's what makes us different at the Burnt Beans, because the attention to detail to get that shit right. And if it bothered him as much as it bothered me, I knew I got a good partner because he gives a shit too. You know, and that's what makes the Burnt Beans so successful, is that it's not the big picture. It's the small little things in that picture, the attention to detail, what makes us different than everybody else.
Perfect. So is there, this is a teaser thing that is like the Burnt Bean Empire. Okay, so is this, and it's not, this is kind of like, maybe there's something else coming.
I got you,
there's not
right.
Something, you know,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay, so, you know, a lot of people ask me, you know, what is the Burnt Bean and what we are all about? And I tell people that to build an empire, you have to have a solid foundation. The solid foundation is Burnt Bean. That's not the house. That's not the chapel. And that's not my castle. The Burnt Bean is my foundation to my empire that I'm building. And there's a lot of fucking things in the works. And we're excited of all the things. There's someone else trying to come in?
No. She's got the key right there.
Yeah. You might as well come in. Close the door.
We just have a couple more questions and that's it. How are you, Belle? I'm good. How are you? Good.
Love you.
How have you been?
What are y'all filming?
This
is the Burnt Beans.
Big debut. No, we're doing a Meet the Pitmaster with her.
All right, let's finish this bitch up.
Tell his story
All right, let's finish it
to
up.
the world.
Trying to make like a 3-part docu-series on Netflix over here.
That's it. That's the way I do it, brother.
It's taking forever and shit.
All right.
All right, you ready?
Well, this is gonna turn into 5 minutes.
I know.
I know, but we're gonna have it.
Okay, so Burnt Bean, we talk about the foundation. You know, I'm trying to build an empire, you know, and I'm excited because there's a lot of stuff in the works. And the Burnt Bean is just the foundation. And we're gonna keep on adding stories to this foundation. So we're excited. Hold your horses. Grab your popcorn and get your coat and get you something comfy because you're about to see a really cool story.
Good.
Okay, we're done?
Okay. No, we got two last ones.
Oh my God, let's go.
The meat. So we got to talk about the meat.
What meat? Oh, what do you want to talk about?
What's, you know, the thing with you is you know, right now we're going to talk about the wood after this. The wood's the last question. Right now is the meat, quality of the meat.
Okay. Yeah, you know, here at the Burnt Bean, we take pride in everything we do. And, you know, the main thing is that you can't skimp out on what people are here for, is the meats. Proteins, you know, we actually we run through 2 different types of beef purveyors. We have a solid pork purveyor, but you got to have quality products, and that's what makes us different. Another thing too is you use quality beef to make our sausage. You know, we make our sausage. We go through 120 pounds of sausage a week, you know, and that's a lot of links. And you know, that's what makes us different, is that we're not just throwing any kind of brisket we can find on the pits. They're locally sourced. They're aged for 30 to 45 days before we even bring them in. We buy our meat in bulk. We send them to the plants and they sit them there, and we have a rotation. I mean, how many motherfuckers do this? Rotation, 30 to 45 days. We wet age them before we give them to our customers. It's not something that was slaughtered, whenever, let's just throw it on the pit. No, we find out when it's slaughtered, when we buy it, and the days total 35 days, and we say we're going to sell that many this week, and they come through us. Every time they come in here, they're wet aged for 30 to 40 days. And where does that come from? That comes from my background of competition world, because I do the same thing. We wet age them. You tell me who else wet ages them. Maybe Aaron Franklin, I don't know. And maybe there might be a lot of people, but that's the stuff that the Burnt Bean does, is that we go above and beyond and we wet age our stuff before we cook them. And that's what we do. And it's the attention to detail again.
Perfect. Okay, the last thing is the wood.
Okay.
And let's just go ahead and we'll just touch on the wood in the pit.
Okay. We're simple when it comes to wood. It's post oak. That's all we use. Aged post oak, 9% moisture, and that's all we use. And we use nothing but stick burners. And our babies are mill scales. They're named after my grandma's. Melian Belia, A and B pit. That's what we call them. They're 1,000-gallon, 5,000-pound bad bees. 21-foot stacks. Everybody freaks out when they see them. They're like, "Oh man, I bet you it draws good," but you just gotta know what you're doing, man. But yeah, those mill scales are the backbone of what the burnt bean's about. We're about to get 2 more.